Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and welcome to E-commerce Saturday. Now, normally on this day, I talk about tips on how you can make money on e-commerce, but today we got to talk about something else. We got to talk about some actual newsworthy stuff and an editorial that I want to discuss in detail about how the world's largest e-commerce seller of all time, Amazon, is coming for one of your towns in America, and they're ready to rob you and pillage you and take you for everything you got, and you shouldn't do it. Now, this is not going to be a short video, so I don't want to hear any comments about how please get to the point. Here's the point. If you want to know the point right now, Amazon sucks. Don't buy from them. Don't shop from them. Don't give them your money. If you want a more nuanced reason as to why I say that, now is the time for us to go over this article, and we are going to go over it very detailedly with virtually no cuts whatsoever, if there are even any cuts. So let's start. It's from this article from the New York Times called "Promising Billions to Amazon. Is it a good deal for cities?" And again, for those of you who want me to get to the point, the answer is no. But for a more nuanced opinion, let's continue. When New Jersey announced a $7 billion package of tax incentives to try and lure Amazon's second headquarters to Newark, they're referring to, of course, the second headquarters that Amazon has famously been shopping around all across America. Local officials saw a chance to jumpstart a city that has long struggled with poverty and joblessness. Many economists, however, saw something else, a failed development strategy that they had hoped was falling out of favor. And that is very true, and of course we will get into why in a moment. In their view, tax incentives are little more than corporate giveaways that divert money from education, infrastructure, and other priorities that ultimately do more for a region's economy. In the last decade, those arguments seem to be gaining traction as state and local officials put limits on once generous handouts, which is good for them, but as we can see, the problem is going to continue. And I had an itch there, sorry. But that restraint may be crumbling. Several locations like Chicago and suburban Montgomery County in Maryland have offered Amazon their own 9- and 10-figure incentive packages. The Taiwanese electronics manufacturer Foxconn last year persuaded Wisconsin to offer more than $4 billion in tax credits and other inducements to build a new plant. And the next big competition could be taking shape. Okay, just real quick about that $4 billion tax for Wisconsin. Has anyone here heard Foxconn? Don't Google it. You just know who Foxconn is at the top of your head. I mean, really, how much good could they have done? Okay, going on. Apple announced plans last week for a new campus somewhere in the United States, although it said it did not plan to Amazon-style public auction, which I have problems with Apple, but I will give them that much credit. This is very deliberate on Amazon's part, and despite what Amazon says, despite the things that they are looking at, or they say they're looking for, oh, we're looking for a community, we're looking for houses, we're looking for somewhere where there's well-educated people, they're auctioning it off because they're looking for a tax incentive or something along that line. They're looking for money, folks, pure and simple. They want you to pay for their stuff. But here's why you shouldn't fall for it. Quote, "The stakes are getting higher and the deals are getting worse for the taxpayer," said Amy Liu, or is it Liu? I don't know. I'm going to say Liu, director of the Metropolitan Policy Program at the Brookings Institution and a longtime critic of tax incentives. More than 200 North American cities submitted bids for Amazon's second headquarters, and the enthusiasm is hardly surprising. The e-commerce giant has said it plans to invest as much as $5 billion in the project and hire up to 50,000 workers, most earning high salaries. Yeah. Do the packagers at Amazon make high salaries? I was under the impression they made barely more than minimum wage for basically slave labor. Mark Zandi, chief economist of Moody's Analysts, said that the project could be transformational even for a big city. They're probably at least a little right on that one, so I'll give them that. But let's continue. But the project also carries risks. Accommodating Amazon's thousands of workers will require hiring more teachers, widening roads, and building more housing. The cost for those upgrades will fall on the residents and existing businesses. And yes, that's the first problem. Whenever one of these big plants come in, I mean, yeah, the company plans to build a plant, and they will hire people. But then they go back to the city. It's like, oh, by the way, the roads aren't adequate. We need new roads. Oh, and by the way, the schools aren't teaching the kids what we need them to learn for this plant should they want to work here in the future. So we needed to hire more teachers. I mean, heck, we're not going to pay the bill for that. I mean, God forbid. I mean, yeah, it benefits us more than anyone, but no. You got to pay. Remember, it's part of the deal. We just promised to build the building and provide some jobs. This happens a lot. This happens an awful, awful lot. And it's been happening for generations. It still happens. And I'm amazed people keep falling for it. So, man, I am so itchy today. Sorry. Continuing. Gina Schaefer, who owns a dozen hardware stores in the Washington area, said she did not mind paying taxes and had learned to deal with the bureaucratic hurdles that come with running a small business in the area. But she said it was frustrating to watch local governments. 3 of the 20 finalists for the Amazon project are in the Washington area. Roll out the red carpet for a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Suddenly, she said, her tax dollars could be flowing to one of her most daunting competitors. Quote, though there are no incentives for those of us who are already here, Ms. Schaefer said, alluding to Amazon's chief executive, Jeff Bezos. She added, why should the richest man in the world, in the history of the world, get money to open his business? And that's an ethical dilemma. Here's the thing. I am a capitalist. I have made that very clear. I believe you have the right to make money. You have the right to make money however you want. And provided you're not doing something illegal or having an outright monopoly or near monopoly, the governments should stay out of it. Does this sound like the government is staying out of anything? They are taking taxpayer money. They're giving it to a corporation who apparently is a multi-billion corporation. They can afford their own building. Heck, they could even afford to build the roads around it. But no, they are taking the taxpayer money, some of whom will directly be affected by Amazon opening a headquarters. Heck, some of those people will go out of business because Amazon is there. They're taking those people's tax money and they're funding it to the corporation. That is not the government staying out of business. That is actually the government impeding on my business, taking the money and giving it to the corporation. I mean, hello. And you know that those small businesses are going to be hurt because, anyway, yeah. How many of you have gone to a real store recently? I mean, that's totally meant to be a guilt trip, by the way. Continuing. Indeed, tax incentives tend to flow overwhelmingly to big, established companies rather than the local startups that research has shown are a more significant source of job growth. And some who have studied the issue say incentives rarely work. Companies will play cities and states off one another to save money, but ultimately base site selection decisions mostly on other factors. Now, we're going to get back to that other factors thing in a moment, but yeah. Again, here's the thing. Why does it work out more when you support local communities? Because here's the thing. While I do believe that there is a certain level of you need to try your hand at your own business, and if it takes off, great. If it fails, oh well. At least you say you tried. Those who are given, people who try to get that loan, who are given that loan, are much more likely to try to stay in business. They will hire people and try to keep them there. Amazon is like McDonald's in a way. The overlap is huge and they don't care. They do not care. And by the way, Amazon is also not interested in maintaining employees, as we'll discuss. Oh, no, let's discuss it now, actually. Because they aren't interested in having employees. They've just opened a store, a grocery store that has no cashiers or anything. You pay with a smartphone. That's all you do. Don't need to pay employees. And they are working on machines in their warehouses to package stuff, get the stuff, package it, and ship it, that are run by drones and machines. They want to deliver the packages with drones, although I think 7 years later we all can agree that's not happening. They want to get rid of the humans. You are investing billions of dollars to come to your community, prey on some people who desperately need a job, and then they're going to be trying to fire those people probably within 5 years. Yeah. Not only do I have an issue with the government putting money like that into these things, because they shouldn't be invested in any businesses like that, but they're doing it for a business that's going to ultimately destroy jobs. And $7 billion could create a lot of small businesses where you could have a fledgling economy where maybe you don't need Amazon. This stuff makes me mad. Megan Randall, a researcher at the Urban Institute who studies economic development policy, said companies cared most about a talented workforce, which requires good schools and colleges, and amenities like affordable housing, parks, and public transit that makes a place desirable. Tax incentives, she said, makes those investments harder for the local government to afford. Well, for the record, I do think Amazon does want the biggest payout possible, but they might settle for $1 billion less if they can find a slightly nicer area. So I'm just throwing that out. Quote, those dollars are things that could go towards educating kids, building roads, investing in quality of life for your residents. Ms. Randall said, yeah, and they could also invest in good local businesses that are committed to staying there, not going anywhere. Many local officials acknowledge the downsides to incentives and say they try to build in protections such as clawback clauses that require companies to repay incentives if they do not hire as many workers as promised. But they say that refusing to offer incentives at all is the equivalent of unilateral disarmament. But here's the thing, if nobody offered incentives, then Amazon would simply have to go where, there would basically, where they would need to go. They would have to look at the housing or the property taxes. They would have to find the workplace, how many people might really be there. There's things that they'd have to look at. Now, you could probably argue that if Amazon had to look for something other than incentive money, then yeah, I guess they're just going to Washington, California, or New York, or maybe even Miami because all the people, right? I don't deny that's not an issue, but really, the town shouldn't be bankrupting themselves and hinging on one company, because here's the thing, as you also have learned from the past, and you can watch Michael Moore's Roger and Me if you want to know the reason why, and that's one of the very few Michael Moore movies I can honestly say I recommend. You don't want your whole town to hinge on one company being there for the vast majority of the economics to flow. Again, watch Roger and Me, see how the town was utterly destroyed when General Motors moved their manufacturing plant out of the city. The place has never been the same since. Let's see here. Quote, nobody wants to get involved in it. Nobody wants to have to do this, but we're in a competitive environment, said Dennis M. Davin, which, by the way, I've already read the article. His real name's actually David. Secretary of Community and Economic Development for Pennsylvania, where two cities, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, are among the 20 finalists for the Amazon project. Still, until recently, there have been signs that cities and states were, if not declaring a ceasefire, at least taking steps towards de-escalation in the incentive wars. Counties in Ohio and Colorado reached regional agreements to stop using tax breaks to compete with one another, and Florida's legislature voted to rein in the state's business incentive program, which is correct thing to do. Again, if you want to try to build a business and fail or succeed, whatever happens, you are free to do so. But if I believe that I want the government in less of my life as possible, I also don't want them helping out businesses that may be my direct competitor. I don't believe the government should be sanctioning which businesses are successful and which ones aren't. Let's see here. Although the mega deals never disappeared, the growth of incentive programs did slow for a period. Timothy J. Bartik, an economist at Upjohn Institute in Kalamazoo, Michigan, oh hey, my friend Chris lives there, has compiled a database of state tax incentives dating back to 1990. The value of such incentives soared in the 1990s, Mr. Bartik has found, but has largely leveled off since the early 2000s. Now, we're going to skip this part. Well, okay, I'm sorry. There is one more part here that's important. Economists are not opposed to all incentives in all cases. Publicly funded transportation upgrades or job training programs, for example, can help entice companies while also benefiting existing businesses. Tax credits aimed at revitalizing abandoned, polluted, or blighted areas can encourage development that eventually expands the city's tax base. And that's pretty much what I'm trying to say. If the government needs to invest, and here's the thing, I am definitely for less government, but I acknowledge that government has a place, and it's this area. Like right now, I believe, yes, it is beneficial for the government to be investing in the bullet train in California because here's the thing. Yeah, there is a company specifically that will benefit financially from the bullet train immediately. But for example, me and Katie are definitely considering our options. I'm not sure if we can afford to stay in Southern California for too terribly much longer. Maybe 2 or 3 years at the most. But you know what? Hey, if there's a bullet train, she can keep her high-paying job here, and we can live somewhere in California where the rent is astronomically cheaper than here, and she can still get to work in her hour or so. That is helping the community, and those are the kind of projects that government should be investing in. They should be investing in projects and infrastructure that helps everyone, not just a single corporation. So, let's see here. That is essentially the approach taken by New York, another Amazon finalist. Alicia Glenn, the city's deputy mayor for housing and economic development, said Amazon would probably get hardly any tax breaks if it chooses to locate its second headquarters in Midtown or Lower Manhattan, the city's two traditional business centers. But the company would get tax breaks if it selected less established sites in Brooklyn or Queens. Those incentives, she noted, are available to any company that locates in those areas, although New York State could also offer its own tax breaks, and yeah, so that's not helping the situation at all. We don't rely on incentives, but we do have incentives in place to encourage companies to go to parts of the city that they might not otherwise consider. Yeah, but who wants to go to... I don't want to insult anyone. I have a friend who lives in Brooklyn, for the record, and he's very nice, so... Other cities, though, may be buckling to the competitive pressure. After New Jersey announced its incentive package, Maryland countered with its own $5 billion package, and I want to note they can offer $2 billion less because, unlike New Jersey, they have a very nice living area that... I think New Jersey's nice and pretty sometimes, but there's still not a whole lot to do there. At least in Maryland, you can fish a little bit more, I guess. Few packages rival those bids in scale, but other cities have come up with their own creative offerings. Columbus, Ohio, for example, would waive all property taxes for Amazon for 15 years, subject to certain conditions, and would give back a share of the income taxes paid by Amazon's employees to the company in cash. Yeah, but no trans. Major cities have kept the details of their bids under wraps, but have left little doubt that they are open to negotiations. Quote, "We're not going to be outbid on Amazon doing business here," said Mike Rawlings, the mayor of Dallas. "We dream no small dreams here. We want to be the biggest in the best." But even in Texas, there are limits. Nelson W. Wolf, the county executive whose domain includes San Antonio, said he would have loved to see Amazon open its new headquarters here, but he was not interested in breaking the bank to make it happen. In a letter to Mr. Bezos in October, Mr. Wolf and Ron Nierenberg, San Antonio's mayor, said the city would sit out the process and instead invest its resources in education and housing and hopefully, infrastructure that would, and building restoration that would be beneficial to everyone who wants to open a business there. "I knew it was going to be a big bloody incentive war," Mr. Wolf said, "and I just didn't think we'd be able to play in that kind of game." So, which pretty much sums it up. So, yeah, here's the thing. I am totally in objection to this bidding war. I know it's business, but again, we're talking about the government. We're talking about taxpayer dollars. I pay my taxes for the common defense, for the roads, for services that we all use collectively. And yes, that includes healthcare. Sorry, Mom, I don't completely think Obamacare is a totally terrible idea. But this is just wrong. Amazon, in theory, should be making enough money that they can build their complex wherever they want. They made this a public auction style war because they wanted the incentives. This is probably not news to anyone. It's just not. And I think it's terrible. The government shouldn't be investing in it. I think Amazon should write their own check. And of course, they're investing in something that Amazon wants to replace everyone with robots. They are very upfront about this. Why would you want to invest in a company whose sole goal is to put out the competition out of business and fire the workforce at some point while they're at it? There are documentaries out there where former Amazon founders who are now rich, multi-millionaires, sometimes billionaires, they look at Amazon and they're living comfortably and they're like, yeah, we made a mistake by founding this company. We may have destroyed the world. Maybe I'll talk more about it in another video. This video has definitely gotten long enough. But in the meantime, what about you guys? How do you feel about the Amazon second headquarters? And is one of your cities a finalist for it? And if so, does that make you happy or angry, indifferent? I would love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy these videos, consider becoming a Patreon member for a little $1 a month. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.